You are not imagining it. If you are somewhere between your late 30s and early 50s, parenting children while your body is going through perimenopause, and you feel like you have lost access to the calm, patient version of yourself you used to be, you are not losing your mind, and you are not becoming a bad mother. What is happening to you has a name. It has a biological explanation, and 3 doctors have weighed in on exactly why this stage of life makes parenting so much harder than any other phase that came before it. Today, I want to walk you through all of it, because 90% of women in perimenopause were never taught what this transition actually does to the brain. And that gap in understanding is leaving an enormous number of mothers feeling ashamed of something that is not their fault. Let me start with a number that explains a lot. More than 800 million women between the ages of 35 and 53 are currently going through perimenopause or menopause worldwide. This is one of the most universal biological experiences that exists. And yet, in a survey of nearly 1,000 perimenopausal women, more than 90% said they had never been taught about perimenopause in school. Only 37% of women reported having a proactive and satisfactory conversation about it with their healthcare provider. So the vast majority of women entering this transition are doing it completely unprepared, with no framework for understanding what is happening in their bodies or their brains, and no language for why everything suddenly feels so much more intense. A recent study found that fluctuating estrogen levels during perimenopause are linked to mood swings, irritability, and even depression, particularly in women who are also managing a full parenting schedule and everything that comes with it. The key word there is fluctuating, not just declining. It is the instability of estrogen levels during the transition, the constant shifting up and down, that creates the neurological turbulence. Dr. Naomi Potter, a physician and menopause specialist, says it is extremely common for women at this stage to tell her they do not recognize themselves. And she is very clear about something important. This is not a personality change. It is a neurohormonal shift. The person you were is still there, but the biological environment your brain is operating in has changed significantly. Here's the science of why that change hits parenting so hard specifically. Estrogen receptors are found throughout the brain, and they play a key role in the serotonin and noradrenaline systems that regulate mood and thinking. When estrogen drops or fluctuates, it directly affects the calming response in your brain. Situations that you previously handled with patience, the repeated asking, the loud screens, the bedtime resistance, the small daily conflicts that come with raising children, may suddenly feel overwhelming or triggering in a way that genuinely surprises you. Dr. Potter says the most useful way to think about this is in terms of capacity rather than failure. On days when perimenopausal symptoms are worse, your emotional bandwidth is simply lower. It is not that you care less or that you have become someone different. It is that the neurological resources available to regulate your response have been reduced by something happening in your hormones, not your character. Dr. Suzanne Gilberg, a board-certified OBGYN and author of Menopause Boot Camp, identifies 2 symptoms in particular that affect parenting most directly: emotional processing and sleep disruption. Both of these decrease patience and increase emotional reactivity. And she is direct about what that means. All of these impacts will affect any relationships in your life, and parenting relationships are among the most emotionally demanding that exist. Nearly 1 in 3 women say perimenopausal symptoms significantly disrupt their daily life, and that disruption includes the tasks, the mental load, and the emotional labor that come with supporting children day after day. Dr. Supatra Tovar, a clinical psychologist and registered dietitian, adds something that is worth sitting with for a moment. This stage does not make you less competent, but it does make everyday life feel more intense. She points to the impossible standard that many women in this phase are still expected to meet: emotionally regulated, productive, nurturing, successful, physically well, socially present, and resilient, all at the same time. There's very little room in that model for fluctuation, rest, or humanity. And perimenopause is a phase of life that requires all 3. When the expectation is that capable women never struggle, It creates shame during a transition that actually requires adaptation and care. Dr. Tovar is clear on this, that shame is not earned. It is imposed by an unrealistic standard that does not account for what is biologically happening. So what do the doctors actually recommend? The starting point, all three agree, is awareness. Understanding that what you are experiencing has a neurobiological explanation changes your relationship to it. Instead of interpreting your lower patients as a moral failure, you can recognize it as a symptom that deserves the same consideration as any other health symptom. Dr. Potter suggests thinking in terms of your emotional bandwidth on any given day and adjusting your expectations of yourself accordingly on days when symptoms are more pronounced. The next step is communication, both with your healthcare provider and with the people around you. Dr. Gilberg says that understanding the neurobiology of perimenopause can support the creation of strategies to buffer its impacts, and that communicating with loved ones to create boundaries, rest, and solutions to decrease conflict is genuinely valuable. This may feel uncomfortable at first. Briefing the people in your inner circle about what your hormones are doing is not something most women have been encouraged to do. But all three doctors agree that bringing your family into that understanding creates the kind of support that actually helps, rather than leaving them confused about why things feel different. Talking to your children specifically is something Dr. Potter actively encourages. She says these conversations help children understand that bodies change throughout life and that it is okay to talk about feelings and health. Children are perceptive. They notice when something feels different. Naming it in an age-appropriate way, even simply saying that your body is going through a change right now and that your big feelings have nothing to do with them, gives them a framework to understand what they are observing rather than internalizing it as something they caused. Dr. Tovar says that silence often creates confusion or shame on both sides of the relationship. Making these conversations normal is how you protect the trust and connection you have built with your children during a phase when your emotional foundation is genuinely shifting. The broader message from all three doctors is the same. Support during this transition should be seen as essential, not optional. Perimenopause is a health priority, not an inconvenience to be powered through alone. The instinct many women have to push through, to maintain the same output and the same emotional availability, regardless of what is happening internally, is not sustainable during this phase, and it is not what this transition calls for. It calls for adaptation, intentional rest, and the willingness to ask for and accept support. There is also something worth acknowledging about the timing of perimenopause in relation to parenting. Many women are moving through this transition at exactly the same time their children are entering adolescence. Two major developmental transitions happening simultaneously in the same household, each bringing its own emotional intensity, its own hormonal volatility, its own need for understanding and patience. That overlap is not a coincidence, and it is not a personal failure. It is simply biology, and knowing that is one of the most useful things you can take from this video. The capacity for connection that you have built with your children does not disappear during perimenopause, but it may need to be tended to differently, more intentionally, with more rest, more honesty, and more willingness to name what is happening rather than pretending it is not. The mothers who come through this transition with their relationships intact are not the ones who powered through silently. They are the ones who allowed themselves to be human, communicated what they needed, and treated this stage of life as what it actually is, a significant biological transition that deserves real support. If this gave you language for something you have been struggling to explain, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week I cover health topics that affect real life in ways that matter. And share this with someone who is in the middle of this right now and has not yet heard that what she is feeling has an explanation and that she is not alone in it.